Hello, one and all, and welcome to a special magical version of Top Deck Bots. Now, I actually was invited to a group project of content creators to do what's called the One Magical Card event. Now, essentially, the basic premise of this is we're making either videos, articles, or such. You probably will see it through the Twitter hashtag as soon as this video is launched, essentially. You'll see a bunch of content creators through the Magic community pretty much stating what is their favorite Magic card and explaining it and just making, hopefully, entertaining videos or articles to explain why the card's their favorite. Now, one thing to keep in mind favorite is subjective. That doesn't mean a card is like really, really overall powerful. For some people, a favorite card can be a variety of things. It could be maybe they love the art, they love the story. Maybe it is a power level thing. Maybe they love playing the card with its interactions and such. As for me, as many people know through my episode and through my shows, the Brewing Labs, I love the Jank Brew. I like to test out mechanics. I like to see kind of like variety realms of janky applications of cards. So it was really kind of hard to think what is the quintessential one magical card, my favorite magic card of all time. And honestly, I think it's the one that helped started my jank brewing applications. And to do that, we had to go all the way back to the summer of 2016. I believe it was in July, and Eldritch Moon has came out. Now, of course, everybody when they saw it, they were like, "Oh, Emrakul. Okay, Emrakul went to Innistrad." So pretty much the kind of like old classic gothic horror became more Lovecraftian horror to an extent. So in other words, as many people joked at the game store, it was kind of pretty much Bloodborne the expansion. Nevertheless, it was still fun to see a variety of cards, like seeing fiends being transformed into like Eldrazi spawns and such, and also just the variety of werewolf shenanigans and just basically how they explored the design with delirium and all that stuff. Now, my quintessential favorite card is a colorless card, and before you ask, no, it's not Emrakul the Promised Land. Here's a little fact you might want to know about me. If there's a card that I never really like playing with or playing around with, and this is going to be quick because we want to talk about love, not like distaste, I've never been a fan of the hey, I'm going to steal your turn cards. It's not my cup of tea, as the old saying goes. So, if it's not Emrakul the Promised End, is it Eldrazi Scourge? No, 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 no. The power of this card is just kind of funny, though it is one of the more jankier rares that they had produced in Eldritch Moon. It cost 2 mana, it was a 5/5, and it was the Lupine Prototype. A 2 mana 5/5 Wolf Construct. Okay, before we get to the card itself, just the art itself, it's just glorious. It's either a werewolf or a wolf in a robot mech suit. There's just sometimes where people always forget that magic art and history have, while there are definitely some great arts, there are some arts that are just intended to be very both metal but silly metal, as I like to call it. Like both like this is awesome, but then it's also like this is also goofy at the same time. You both laugh and you're like wow. And Lupine Prototype's that for me. It's just like a wolf in a mech suit. That's just glorious. Now let's talk about the card itself. A 2 mana 5/5, and then it can't attack or block unless the player has no cards in hand. Now, many people when they look at this card, they probably think of this as we like to call the trash rare of the set. It's kind of the rare that if you're playing limited specifically, you pull it and you're like, monkeys. And then you just toss it aside and then throw it into the draft chaff, essentially. So, why is what is essentially draft chaff to a basic extent my favorite card in Magic the Gathering? Why is it that one magical card? Well, to explain, we have to rewind just a little bit last year before Shadows of Innistrad had released. This was set before Eldritch Moon, and there was obviously press conferences talking about kind of like the upcoming set and such. And one of the mechanics that they revealed was the fact that Madness was in Shadows of Innistrad. Now, To put this in perspective, when I started Magic the Gathering, I played during kind of the Pharaohs block. So, like the original Pharaohs, I started in Journey into Nets. So, I never really experienced Time Spiral or kind of like all the madness mechanics within those sets and with previous sets. So, this was my first time actually seeing madness as a mechanic. And as stated before, I kind of like to test jankier mechanics, and when I saw that, I was like, done, I'm going to test it out. And then I kind of looked through the history of Magic, and I kid you not, my first deck to play in Legacy, like I played this as a casual Legacy deck one time, was a Tybalt. Yes, the 2 mana Tybalt. Not the free cost good Tybalt from War of the Spark, the 2 mana Tybalt Madness Legacy deck. Now, just to be clear, Madness, while is a fun mechanic, is not was supported during that time. Like there was still some really good like commander cards, specifically like Big Game Hunter and stuff like that. But it was a really hard supported mechanic, and trying to brew a whole deck around that, while fun and janky, which of course, nah, it was not a good deck. Like the minute I played in that tournament, I got my butt whooped. Like it was literally I was Loki and the legacy players were Hulk, and it's like boom, 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 boom. Though surprisingly, I was able to at least win one match against the legacy burn deck. But to be fair, I think their draw was a little bit off, if I'm being honest. Nevertheless, so weird thing is, I kind of had this preferred play pattern of trying to discard for value, discard for value. I even kind of noticed that when I played in Shadows of Innistrad and tried to make the Rakdos discard deck work and such, and just have fun with those Realm of Shenanigans. Well, when Eldritch Moon came out, hey, an incentive to discard your hand. AKA, I can discard all my cards in my hand, and hey, I have a 2 mana 5/5 that I can attack with. Boop, boop. And most of the Rakdos Madness discarding deck style is very aggro based. Like, it is a very heavily aggro based deck. So, and one of my preferred beginner playstyles was aggro. Now, I'm going to get one distinction out of the way that people kind of make when they see play archetypes and such. People always take a look at aggro, they think of it as the brain dead archetype. They think like, oh, it's just a simple archetype. You just attack face, blah, 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 blah. Very simple and such. No complicated procedures, blah, 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 blah. But actually, and it's a lesson I kind of learned throughout playing through this Eldritch Moon and also just essentially throughout my Magic career and such, content creation and ways. Aggro, while sometimes can have very simple play patterns, it can actually be a very complicated deck to play because sometimes you have to think, when's the perfect time to attack? When is the perfect time to stall? Like the play patterns and play decisions that you have to do in the aggro deck and overall design of how to be aggressive can vary within a variety of metas and can be a very interesting design challenge. Now, yes, I know that sometimes in current day Magic design, we all dread mono red, but sometimes mono red can be a deck design that can actually make you have to think a little bit because you could do like the super aggro, you can do the mid-range Ember Cleavish shenanigans. You could do like a variation, or you can even go like Big Red with stuff like, well, before the rotation, Drakaseth and stuff like that. I think you can actually do it actually in this rotation. I gotta put that in my potential Jink Brews. But yeah, essentially, I did a very janky aggro deck with essentially, I kind of went off tangent there. But yeah, I did a very Rakdos-based aggro deck where it's just usually casting both the mana spells and then getting cards in my graveyard to fuel kind of like Delirium sub-strategies, and also hand disruption for my opponent. Because remember what the card says. It specifically says any player. So, obviously I put a lot of hand disruption spells that were currently legal in Magic at the time. And both kind of like pretty much reduced my hand and also reduced the opponent's hand. Which kind of made a very fun interaction of kind of like the opponent as well as me trying to decide, okay, with this limited resources, how do I play and win the game? Just that little play interaction, it kind of made it one of my post kind of like favorite decks to play. Like, hilariously enough, and the fun thing is there was just still stuff to add to it even post the sets. Like, There's stuff like Hour of Devastation where we got Fleen, and yes, I did try to Fleen the Wolf. Yes, there are more entertaining things to Fleen. Yes, I know. There was like the giant artifact from Kaladesh that I'm having a brain fart on the name, but I'm probably going to post it over there, essentially just for reference. But I just kind of find it funny because it was also good in the Madness based kind of like archetype and such, and there's still a lot of good cards. Like the one that, of course, everybody's still playing today because it's pretty much a modern and even just all eternal format legacy staple is Collective Brutality. Really good card. Like a really, really good card. I remember making sure I got a few copies of those in my Rakdos aggro deck. And other than that, I just kind of love how it kind of looks like the quintessential of my deck design style, where I kind of look at a mechanic. I like to explore kind of like how you play with that mechanic within certain play styles, and then try to find a little janky mix of playing with some cards that people might at first glance think, oh, this card's trash, this card's not that great. But sometimes, when you take a second look at a card and decide to put a fun application with it, with some cards either legal within your format and such, you might end up with a fun brew that, while maybe not like the most competitive brew at them all, still has kind of like your style to it and just is a blast to play with your preference, or maybe even makes your opponent have fun while they're playing against it. And that is why Lupine Prototype is my one magical card. Now, you just pretty much throughout Twitter, you're going to see this hashtag all around with various content creators. I would say catch up with their articles and videos. I'm kind of excited to see kind of like pretty much what the variety of content creators are going to say their favorite card is. I am very excited for that. Nevertheless, I hope you have a lovely day. Sorry if the production quality on this video is a little bit live video blogish. I usually try to update the production quality, but this video kind of had to be made last minute since it was a busy work week, so keep that in mind. Nevertheless, I am planning to get a Brewing Labs video out either by the time this video comes out or by Sunday. And I think this one is going to be a lot entertaining for those who had some very fun, janky application with some powerful mythic artifacts that came from Zendikar Rising. We shall see. But, for everyone now, you have a lovely day. As they say, hip hip hooray. This is LoveDeath, signing out.